everybody, in this video I'm going to be creating and decorating a new journal using the supplies from the Mixed Media Inspired subscription. The base of my journal today is going to be black file folders in 3 different sizes, and I'm stacking and centering them before I begin putting in the holes so that I can stitch these file folders together to hold my journal. I am using the Tim Holtz craft pick to place my holes down the center of the file folders, but you could also use a large needle to pierce the holes through all 3 file folders. After you have all the holes in place, you're going to hold all these pages firmly in one hand and start stitching through the holes with black thread and a needle to start securing your book together. I'm using a traditional figure 8 book binding technique. There's lots of information about this online if you need a more detailed tutorial. After I've stitched everything together and I'm very happy with how the book is holding up, I can knot the end of the thread, and then also I'm going back to my beginning thread and knotting that as well so that both of the ends have knots in them so they'll hold the book together firmly. And then I'm also going to use the needle to just weave in those ends underneath the stitching to hold them a little bit extra before I trim off the excess thread with my scissors. I'm also going to put down a piece of washi tape as the spine of my book to hold all those threads in place and give them a little extra stability. Now we can begin working and decorating on the front cover of our journal. I'm using the BoBunny Tea Party stamp set, and one of the stamps in there says tea time with an exclamation point. I didn't really like the exclamation point, so I'm using my scissors to very carefully trim away the exclamation point off of the stamp, and now when I stamp it, it will only say tea time. I'm putting some white paint onto this stamp, and then I'm stamping it multiple times in 2 different areas so that I'm starting to create layers on the front cover of my journal in different brightnesses. And then I'm also grabbing some white gesso on a palette knife, and I'm scraping this on the front of my journal to create an area of white space so that I can continue layering on top of it, and all of my colors will show up really nicely instead of being absorbed or sucked into the black background. I'm not doing this very carefully. I want there to be that grungy look to it, that old world look to it, so you can see the marks made with the palette knife as it's applying this gesso. Once again, I'm bringing in the tea time stamp, this time inking it up with black archival ink, and I'm only stamping it on the white gesso areas multiple times so that I'm getting different layers and different takes on this black ink. And then I'm applying a layer of Finnabair Sparks paint. This is a metallic paint. The color of this and all the other products used in this video are listed in the description below. I'm once again putting this paint onto the cover using a palette knife in the same technique as I did to apply the white gesso, and I'm setting this aside to dry. While the cover is drying, I also am putting some of that Sparks paint onto a piece of white cardstock. And the reason for this is that I'm going to stamp some of those stamps on top of here, and I won't have to color everything in because they will already be colored with this painted paper. While those are drying, I'm grabbing a piece of dictionary paper and I'm drawing a circle with my pencil and then cutting that out with my scissors. I'm going to start using this dictionary paper as another layer on my journal cover. So I've drawn the circle, I'm just trimming away some of the extra paper here, and then I'm going to go ahead and trim inside the circle so that instead of it being a solid circle, I'm only having the outline. I'm eyeing this. If this is an issue for you, you could also trace something so that you have a more exact circle. I'm okay with the homemade eyeballing aspect of this, so I'm just 100% quickly cutting this out with my scissors, and I'm happy with the imperfection of this. I'm going to repeat this a few different times so that I have different sizes of these circle outlines, both to use on the cover of my journal and on the inside as well in future pages and videos. I'm going to glue down these dictionary paper circle outlines with Distress Collage Medium. This is a permanent adhesive and it will dry 100% matte. One thing to note when you're working with dictionary papers is wet adhesives can have a tendency to make them very flimsy and easy to tear. So when you're sticking this down, just use some care that you don't end up tearing your paper. And if you do, don't worry about it. You can very easily match it up so that you do not even see the tear marks and it's 100% fine. And in most cases, you end up layering more things and you wouldn't see this tear anyway. Now I'm going to go ahead and stamp on the painted paper we made earlier. It is now dry, and I'm going to be stamping the teapot and 2 of the teacups onto this painted paper. I'm using black archival ink because it is a permanent ink, so I know later on if I add more products to this that I will not activate the stamped outline. It will be permanently in place. And as I said, I'm stamping the teapot and then the 2 teacups, and I'm going to cut them out with my Fiskar micro snips. Now I'm going to start painting some flowers with Nuvo vintage drops and a paintbrush. This is a 3D product so that anything I do with the petals and have movement in it, they will dry textured just as is. I'm taking care to put that paintbrush in water instantly so that I don't damage the paintbrush for long-term use. Then I'm using a Dina Wakley media tool and the Finnabair Sparks paint again to put centers in all of those flowers. And I'm doing this exact same technique on the stamped images that I made earlier so that I can have textural flowers on all of my cutout stamped images. So on all the petals, I'm putting the Nuvo drops, and then I'm putting a dot of the Sparks paint in the center of all the flowers. Everything is dry, and I'm now ready to place my stamped images onto the front of my journal cover. I'm gluing everything down with Dina Wakley Media Ultra Thick Gel. And the reason that I like this adhesive is that it gives me an open drying window of about 10 minutes so that I'm able to place my elements, and if I want to move them slightly, this adhesive gives me that option. A lot of other adhesives will dry directly upon contact, and so when you're doing collage, you have to be committed. And I sometimes like the flexibility of being able to change my mind or scoot it a little one way or another, as you're going to see with this teapot in half a second. I put it down and I wanted it to be a little bit lower, so because I'm using the ultra thick, I'm able to just move that slightly and it's not a problem. The adhesive dries 100% clear, and now I'm happy with where I have this in place. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you were inspired and got ideas to create your own journals. I would love to see what you're working on, so take a picture and post using hashtag ArtJournalJunction. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a thumbs up and also hit the subscribe button so YouTube knows you want to see more of our mixed media videos in the future.